What's up guys? In this video, I will be highlighting 17 mistakes that I wish I knew before going to India to hopefully make your journey as smooth as possible. If you are familiar with our channel, you will know that I actually did India as a solo trip, but we are a travel couple.
Don't worry guys, I'm still here making sure everything's looking good behind the scenes. If you can do a massive favor for us, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. I will be so happy.
Let's dive in with mistake number 1, which is not knowing what street food is safe to eat. Firstly, it is possible to eat street food in India and not get Delhi belly, but you do need to know where to go. My absolute number 1 tip is to opt for busy stalls with a high turnover. Busy stalls mean that the food is prepared and served quickly with fresher ingredients, and it also acts as quality assurance because if there's lots of people waiting in line, then it's a good sign that the food is not only delicious but safe to eat. However, a much surer way to ensure that you eat from safe vendors is to book a guided street food tour. These are actually very affordable and your local guide will know the best places to go as they do these tours regularly. We have linked some great options for both Delhi and Jaipur down below.
My guide was just saying that's a famous Indian drink, a chai, but they make it with ginger. It is safe to have because though they make it with tap water, they boil it so much, it's still safe.
Moving on to mistake number 2, which is drinking a delicious ice-cold beverage, but more specifically, the ice. While this can be very tempting, especially in the hotter months, it can be hard to know whether the ice is made with bottled water or tap water. If it is made with tap water, you run a very high risk of getting poorly, as in general, tap water in India is not safe to drink, especially if you are not from India. My number 1 tip is to always ask if the ice is made with bottled water, and if in doubt, leave it out. That brings me on to mistake number 3, which is not being aware of water bottle scams. I was not aware of this before visiting India, but there is actually a scam where water bottles will be reused and filled with tap water and then sold to the public. Unfortunately, this one can catch people out and lead to people getting quite poorly. The best tip is to always make sure when you buy a bottle of water that the seal is closed and that when you open it, you hear it click as you open it, and then you should be safe. Another top tip that our guide gave us is once you finish with the water bottle, make sure you scrunch it up and then you will protect future people from this scam. Mistake number 4 is not being aware of visa scams. There are actually a number of scam sites claiming to provide Indian visas or actually providing India visas but at a much higher price than if you got your visa directly on the Bureau of Immigration for India website. This actually happened to a couple of our group members, so I really wanted to mention it. We have linked the Bureau of Immigration for India website down below so you can see exactly what it looks like, and I would advise only using this website to get your visa. For reference, it cost me $25 for a 30-day tourist visa and I am from the UK. While prices vary, it shouldn't be like $100 for a 30-day tourist visa, which is what happened to some of our friends. Moving on to mistake number 5, which is booking the wrong class of sleeper train. Sleeper trains are actually a great way to travel around India. They are super cost effective and I use these while in India. However, there are a number of different categories of sleeper train and you want to make sure that you get the right one. There are 3 types of AC class, AC1, AC2 and AC3, and the clue is in the name, these all come with air conditioning. However, the most common class is actually without AC and this is called sleeper class. My main advice would be to always book an AC class train as these are far more comfortable and in general less crowded. I took an AC2 class sleeper train while in India and you can check out my full experience in this video right here. That brings me on to mistake number 6, which is not wrapping up warm for the night train. Guys, I learned this the hard way. If you do get an AC class train, it is cold. The aircon works well. The beds are often directly underneath the aircon, so it can get very chilly overnight.
That is the aircon and that is my bed, so it's going to be cold.
I would strongly recommend wrapping up in many layers for this journey, and if you have one, take an extra blanket. Mistake number 7 is visiting India during smog season. And this one actually happens far more often than you might think. The smog season actually coincides with India's winter months, which temperature-wise is the best time to visit India. Smog season typically starts in late November and lasts until January. And this is where the air quality and visibility can become dangerously poor due to crop burning and other factors. I would strongly advise avoiding visiting at this time of year, especially if you do have respiratory conditions. But you do want to visit India during the winter months, which fall from October until about March. Therefore, probably the absolute best times to visit India would be October to early November and February to March. The next mistake is taking a drone to India. And the online advice about this is extremely confusing. But after extensive research and speaking to many of our friends and hearing others' experiences, I can conclusively say at the time of making this video, no, foreigners cannot take a drone to India. If you do, there is a possibility it will be confiscated at the airport. Unfortunately, this has happened to quite a lot of people. So if you are a drone pilot, consider things carefully before taking your drone. Ultimately, I made the decision not to take ours as it wasn't worth the risk for us. But I have written a detailed guide on this topic and we will link this down below. It's free. If you are a drone pilot considering taking your drone to India, I strongly recommend giving it a read before you go. That brings me on to the next mistake, which is taking a tripod to India. Well, not into India per se, but into a lot of the main attractions in India. Many attractions in India will actually confiscate your tripod at the entrance and sometimes microphones as well. The rules on this are not particularly clear, but here are some of my top tips. Firstly, if you use a stick for your camera, for example, if you are a vlogger, then either take off the tripod or purchase a different stick that doesn't have a tripod. Tripods seem to be the main issue here, so just be mindful of that. But an extendable pole that doesn't have a tripod tends to be okay from my experience, so that's a top tip. My second top tip is, in general, the fancier the camera looks, the more likely there might be an issue. So before you enter some of these major attractions, take off things like big microphones or wires and try and make them look as inconspicuous as possible, and it might help. For example, one time they did actually take the wind muff off the top of my GoPro, and then they did allow me entry afterwards, and they just hold it in a security deposit box and you can collect it on the way out. And most of the time that's completely fine to do. Obviously, if you do have really expensive equipment, you might be nervous to do that. So it's just something to consider with the major attractions like the Taj Mahal and Agra Fort. They're ones that come to mind, just being careful with really fancy equipment. My third top tip is to always be polite and respectful. Rules can change from week to week and place to place. Our guide didn't even always know how it was going to go at the entrance, so patience is always a virtue in these situations. Just for exact reference, here is one I prepared earlier. This is a GoPro stick, and this particular stick comes with a tripod built in, which overall is really, really handy. But in India, this is far more likely to be confiscated than it would be if you were to take just a plain stick without a tripod attached. So you're probably better just getting a normal stick for certain attractions. The next mistake I learned the hard way was not being prepared to buy my data SIM at Delhi airport. When I arrived at the airport, there were actually no working cash machines inside. The only working cash machine was outside the airport. And once you leave, you can't go back in. And the Airtel counter, which is a great data SIM in India, only accepts cash. So this left me in quite a difficult situation, as there are also restrictions on taking Indian rupees into the country. There are two options to get around this problem. Firstly, you could take some cash in your local currency with you on the plane and then exchange this at the currency exchange counter in the airport. But the exchange rates here are quite poor and it is quite expensive to do this. So I would advise trying to just exchange the amount you need to buy the SIM. Alternatively, another great option would be to pre-buy an e-data SIM. If you do choose to get an eSIM, we highly recommend Nomad. They offer great coverage worldwide in many locations at competitive pricing. You can use our referral code here for $5 off any purchase, and this is valid for the first 5 people to use the code. We have popped a link to Nomad in the description below if you want to check them out. Speaking of data SIMs, if you do choose to buy your SIM in India, Airtel is great from my experience. However, it can be quite tricky to top up for foreigners later down the line. So my recommendation would be to preload your SIM with all the data you think you'll need for the whole trip, and it will make your life a lot easier. Next up is not being aware of selfies in India. It is quite common to be asked for a selfie or a picture as a foreigner in India. This is simply because people in India may not have seen loads of foreigners before. Overall, I found these interactions really wholesome and a great way to meet people. However, other people have reported feeling quite overwhelmed with these interactions. My main advice would be that if you don't want to take a picture, just politely say no. And if this does concern you, traveling in a group can make these encounters feel a lot less intimidating. Just be mindful that if you do say yes and there are lots of other people around, perhaps lots of other people will start to come over and also ask for pictures, which, like I said, I loved, but it's just something to consider if you are going to say yes at that time. The next mistake is visiting the Taj Mahal without visiting the Moonlit Garden. This is less of a mistake and more of a top tip really, but this garden is an absolute hidden gem and a fantastic way to see the Taj Mahal without the crowds. I'll add a Google Maps link to this garden in the description down below. The next thing I wanted to touch on is safety for women. This has been quite a significant topic of discussion in the media regarding India of late, and it's important to be aware of before you do visit India. I do want to lead by saying that the people in India are absolutely wonderful on the whole. They're so excited to meet you, so excited to show you their country, and the most hospitable people. However, it is important to be cautious, especially if you are a female traveler. The main thing I would recommend if you are a solo female is to try and travel with someone else or in a group. This is what I did, and I had an absolutely wonderful time, and I made some friends for life in the group that I was traveling with. If you want to check out the tour that I did, we've actually made an entire video on that, which you can check out right here, and we have a 15% discount code which you can use as well. But if you don't want to do a group tour, they are not for everyone, then just plan ahead really carefully and make sure that you kind of stick to the main tourist areas. Then you should be safe. Speak to locals as well. They can be really helpful. It's also worth noting that I did do a short solo adventure into Delhi at night time. So if you want to see what it's like as a solo female in India at night, you can have a look at that video right here. The next thing to be aware of is dress code. India is an extremely religiously diverse country, and in general, people do dress more modestly. While this is not enforced everywhere, it is certainly something to consider and be aware of. For specific famous religious sites such as the Jama Masjid, you will be expected to cover your knees and shoulders, and for the Sikh Gurudwaras, you will also be expected to cover your head, but don't worry, gowns and headscarves can be provided on site if you need them. The next mistake is not being aware of certain cultural etiquettes. In India, for example, it is polite to shake hands and give and receive objects with your right hand, as the left hand is associated with unclean activities. Using your right hand is actually a sign of respect. It is also important to be aware of tipping culture in India. While not enforced, tipping culture is really big, to the point where it's pretty much expected most places, and a usual amount is around 10% of the bill. However, what can catch people out is that tipping is also usually expected for services such as housekeeping, porterage, and concierge. So, for example, if someone offers to take your bag, just be mindful that it would be polite to tip them afterwards. Other things to consider are ensuring to remove your shoes before entering someone's home or religious sites, avoiding significant public displays of affection, and being aware of dress code. Last but certainly not least is the plug sockets. One thing that I was not aware of before visiting India is that they actually use a number of different plug sockets. They use Type C, Type D and Type M. Which one is present depends on the location. My biggest suggestion would be to take a worldwide travel adapter. Mine literally saved me so many times on this trip when the plug sockets varied at different locations, so I will link the one that I use in the description below. We hope highlighting these mistakes helps your journey to go as smooth as possible, but as always, let us know if you have any questions in the comments below. Big love, guys.
Peace.